which none of us want to be. I wanted to offer a hope and a space for both stories of amazing life and amazing loss. And that, I hope, is what we can create together as we gather in this time of memory of Chuck Morin, who left us too soon, who left us too young, but who leaves us with astonishing examples of grace and growth. I wanted to open our time together with this beautiful poem by Berea. It reminds us that we are part of infinite circles, all of which we can trace ourselves. It reminds us that the delicacy of life surrounds us, and no matter what we do or where we've been, our end is always another beginning. Hear these words, if you will, from Closing the Circle by Berea. Within the circle of our lives, we dance the circle of the years. The circles of the seasons within the circles of the years, the cycles of the moon within the circles of the season, the circles of our reasons within the cycles of the moon. Again and again we come and go, changed, changing, hands join, unjoin in love and fear, grief and joy. The circles turn, each giving into each, into all. Only music keeps us here, each by all the others held. In the hold of hands and eyes, we turn in pairs, that joining each to all again. And then we turn aside the door, out of the sunlight gone, and into the darker circles of return. There can be no mistaking that grief attends us. There can be no rejoicing in the loss of such a bright light. And in the midst of darkness, in the midst of the circles of return, what comes to us in addition to sorrow, the gift of a living grace, the gift of a wounded joy, the gift small candle held in the home of a small hand. It reminds us that dark and loss are not swallowed legacy and born by shock. Life lived, life held and life cherished, love offered, love received. These are the circles which trace our paths. Return to us in this moment and in the days ahead.
Thank you, Kent. I was going to try to do this without notes. No chance. So I first met Chuck in the summer of 2000. Amy, Ellie, Claire, and I, we just moved to Berea and to our house on Peachtree. And we had a friend from high school, Mandy Burns. I ran into Mandy a little bit earlier in this celebration. And Mandy and Amy had connected about bringing us supper. And they decided the best day to do that would be the day we moved in. It was an August day. It was like this outside. It was hot. I had two girls at that time under the age of 5, so it seemed like a good idea, but not so much. So we were setting up our table and chairs and all those good things, and there's a knock on the door, and there's Mandy. And then there's two other people that are with Mandy, and we sort of in our own Eastern Kentucky way just said, come on in. And they did. And it turned out that Mandy introduced us to Chuck and Debra. And so we were at 325 Peachtree, and they were at 317 Peachtree, almost directly across. And in their hands were these two big bags of KFC. And Chuck was standing there. You all will recognize this posture a little bit. He was just kind of standing there in the back, kind of doing this a little bit, and what I would say awkward in his generosity, if you will. My two kids were like ravenous, feral wolves, dancing around, trying to get into the bags, trying to look. Mikaela was really little, just a few months old, and Debra had been holding her and handed Mikaela to Chuck, and she was so little. He was so big, it just made him look even bigger and things. And so he's standing there, and now he's got, his hands are out, and he's holding her like we hold our firstborn, like little fragile eggs that that are going to break. Of course, by the time you get to the third one, you're just kind of, we have a third one somewhere. Sorry about that, Lesley. That's just the way it is. And Chuck was quiet. He was quiet, and one of the things I value in this world is a sense of humor. So I thought I'd try Chuck on. And I said, in some neighborhoods, when the new people move in, they bring supper for a month. And without missing a beat, Chuck says, "That's Peach Bloom, and you live on Peach Street. Here, it's one and done if you're lucky." I knew immediately I had found a kindred spirit, a little banter. And so we talked a little bit. He was turning and getting ready to go, and he said, just kind of in a shruggery way, don't call me if you need something. But I knew what he meant was, call me if you need anything, is what Chuck really meant. It wasn't much longer. Chuck and Debra sold their house to Cindy Richardson, and Cindy moved in, was a great neighbor. Chuck would still stop by. I think he helped her move in, actually. He had that old Dodge pickup truck and was, taking it, helping her, and making sure that Cindy felt safe in the new house. And after they moved away, we saw less of each other, but we run into each other at Lowe's and at Ace Hardware, and we'd catch up a little bit on whatever the repair project was. And he'd kind of do this and kind of grin and raise his eyebrow way up on one side and say something like, "If you need a tool, holler at me. If you need a tool, holler at me." And I knew he meant it as well. So we moved along in our lives, and I'd see Chuck occasionally. Usually it was at school. Debra might be moving stuff in at the beginning of the school year, something like that. And one year we found ourselves at the Fall Festival. And for those of you unfamiliar with Berea Community School, the older Berea Community School anyway, there were no walls. There was carpet that may have been brown or it may have been gray. No one's really sure about that, but I guess that's not really important in this case. But Chuck and I were paired up at the Fall Festival. And if any of you worked at the Fall Festival, the kids would go and buy tickets from their parents, and they'd get these tickets and they'd go around the circle playing games. And some of you are nodding your head going, yeah, I remember that. Well, Chuck and I were assigned the fishing hole. So if you don't know about the fishing hole, the kids have this plastic fishing rod. And it's not really a fishing rod. It's a piece of plastic. It's got a string on it. At the end of that string is a clothespin, okay? And so stretched across the classroom at about 4 feet, so we're talking about here, roughly, there's a twine, and across that is, it could be a sheet or it could be a tarp. And so the kids are on one side with their fishing line, and Chuck and I'm 6'1", Chuck was bigger than me. And we're sitting in these little bitty preschool chairs on the other side of that thing. And the kids would drop their line over and we'd attach, usually it was a McDonald's Happy Meal that was gently used, recycled. So we go, oh yeah, I remember that. We used to give those. And so we would clip those things on, and we've been at this about 30 minutes, just clipping, and the kids would pull it over and squeal with delight at another Beanie Baby that they probably had just donated. But they were pretty excited about it. And Chuck said to me, he said, why are we doing this anyway? And I said, Chuck, it's a fundraiser for the PTO. And of course, I knew he knew that. He said, if you want to make some real money, let's open up a cash bar out in the parking lot. We'll be done in 15 minutes, and we'll never attach another Beanie Baby to a fish. I said, Chuck, we can do it once. We can do it once. And here's what I really know about Chuck. And what a lot of people wouldn't have seen is behind that tarp or that sheet, he'd poke his head around and he'd see who needed one of the nicer toys. And he would make sure one of the nicer ones ended up on the end of that. I don't think I could have blasted him out of there even with a cash bar at that point. So A couple of other things, and then I promise I'll end up. Aside from his kindness and his generosity and his sense of humor, I admired Chuck's determination a lot. We were building a house 12, 13 years ago, and I was talking to Chuck about it. He said, "What kind of siding are you putting up?" And I said, "We're going with hardy board." He goes, "Wow, can I come out and see that?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, sure." And they were living on Herndon at the Lane, and so Herndon Lane at the time. So he comes over, and the contractor's putting it up, and he had to have this special license to put up hardy board. And Chuck's watching, and he's taking some notes, and he looks at the caulk and all this kind of stuff, and the joinery and all that. And so he's there for, I don't know, hour and a half. And he said, "Can I have some of the scraps that the guy has cut off?" I was like, yeah, sure. I said, are you thinking about having it installed on your house, getting someone to come and do it? He just said, no. He said, "I'm not paying anybody something I can do myself. I've got a brother and a father who are free labor. We can figure this out." Some people would call him frugal. Some people would call him cheap. I think, honestly, he just enjoyed the challenge that was inherent in something like that. Mikaela, Katie, Lesley, I'm not going to look at you. Your dad's kindness, his generosity, his determination, and I suspect his sense of humor are a part of who you are. About 2 weeks ago, Katie, I saw you at soccer practice, and you all were conditioning like at 6:30 in the morning. And one of the girls was struggling up the hill. And you were encouraging her. I said, "You got this, you got this, you got this." So I stopped, and I texted your dad in that moment, because that's the kind of thing dads like to hear about their kids. And Mikaela, you're on the path of serving others in a noble, noble way. That's his kindness and his generosity. Lesley, you are one of the most determined kiddos I have ever seen in my life. From elementary school to the soccer practice that day as well, you were there. Chuck's kindness, his generosity, and yes, his love are alive right here in this room with all of us. Kent opened with a Wendell-Berry poem, and it is one of my favorites. And I'll leave you this line from another Wendell poem. "He is hidden among all that is and cannot be lost." He is hidden among all that is and cannot be lost. To the Morgan family, thank you for the opportunity to share so publicly. At this point in the program, I believe we're going to transition to a song. You'll find the words inside of the bulletin there.
We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power, some in pain. We can worship this ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. I am alone, I am searching, hungering for answers.
so I promised myself I wasn't going to cry because I knew that Chuck would make fun of me if he saw me crying. We spent most of our time laughing. I'm very honored to be invited to speak with you guys today about Chuck, about his friendship, and about the amazing work he did as a health center leader. We knew each other for 15 years, 10 of those years spending almost all of our time together at White House clinics. He was a great health center financial leader, but much, much more than that to those of us who knew him well. During my time at White House clinics, I was doing all sorts of jobs. For those of the White House folks here in attendance, they know I've had a few different job titles, but most of them had me spending time with Chuck. One of the things that I learned pretty quickly about Chuck is that he could talk to just about anybody. He had an ability to connect with people. I can see that from everything I've heard today and who I see here in front of me. The funny part was, Mike, you touched on it here, his personality. We saw it in him, but he didn't always see it in himself. Stephanie and I, whenever we were going to go to an event, we got to bring Chuck. We got to bring Chuck along because he can make small talk with anybody. It's definitely not a talent that I have. And he would say stuff to us. He would say, "I don't like talking to people." And he would say, "I can't talk to people." And if you put him around a stranger and he could talk to them, he would talk to them for an hour about just the most random things, 80s football, the history of Berea, like whatever it was, he would do it. One night in Chicago, I went into a convenience store. We were a NAC conference. I went to a convenience store. I came back out. He had met a delivery driver and made friends with him in the 5 minutes that I was in the store. It was just something that he had. For those of you who know Chuck and I, who worked at White House clinics, you'd probably wonder why, or you might be a little worried that I'd be up here talking about Chuck. Any agenda that had Wayne giving a talk about Chuck, or Chuck giving a talk about Wayne could have gone sideways real quickly. It definitely would have gone sideways real quickly. The last presentation that we gave together was in this room over here, and two professionals thought it was a good idea to put pictures of an action star martial arts person who shared the same name as Chuck. We thought Chuck Norris was funny. I don't think anyone else did. When I looked down giving that presentation and that picture of Chuck Norris came up on there, I can see it like it was yesterday. Dr. Dionisio looking at my face, going, "What is wrong with you guys?" That was a presentation on the services that we were providing at White House clinics, by the way. I think our friends would have considered us semi-professional. When Chuck got to White House, speaking of frugality, the hospitals had trained him really, really well. Numbers, numbers, numbers. He could only do things in Excel, which really never changed. He would say we didn't have money, which back then we probably didn't. But the thing that I remembered, I asked him, "Chuck, look at this power cord that I have." It was like basically all metal. We didn't buy new things back then. He goes, "You should duct tape that." Or no, "You should electrical tape that." Save your money. Over the years we chipped away at that, and his heart for the work that we were doing at health centers was as strong as anyone's. Even if he liked to poke at people about the different services they were providing, deep down, he had a heart for that work. We did a lot as a team to improve White House clinics clinically and financially, which is great. But the things that I'm going to remember are the nights we spent finishing up grant applications, getting in our cars to go home, like shaking because it was so cold, seeing Chuck in those Carhartts, shoveling those sideways. I was glad that was in the notice there. Spending the weekends together on all sorts of work things. The EHR Go Live for my 30th birthday. We were spending that weekend together, setting up those tents on the asphalt in August when it was so hot, where the asphalt would be pliable. Chuck sitting there, proud of himself, getting the free haircut that we were providing to everybody because he was getting a free haircut. All the NAT conferences that we went to together, doing March Madness in DC, going to a White Sox game in Chicago, 6 home runs that night. Chuck had on white, like, walking shoes. I remember we did not fit in at all on that L, taking that ride out there. We were very lucky to have that team and have those years together, especially because Chuck was on the team. At a NAT conference right before he left White House, he told me the thing that he was going to miss was the mission, a far cry from the first time that I met him. I was really glad to see him make it back to the Kentucky Primary Care Association, where he lent all of his knowledge and everything that he brought to the table to all the health centers, including my new health center. He was someone that I wanted to have with me in a jam. If I needed to think through a hard decision or get through a hard time, if I needed to calm down, which he wasn't afraid to tell me to calm down. I'm having a hard time. It was a week and a half ago we were doing interviews for an open job position that we had. Whenever I needed help, he showed up for me. He was like a big brother to me. Pretty confident that I annoyed him like a little brother. We joked a lot. We pranked a lot. We laughed when we shouldn't be laughing. It felt like too much then, but it definitely doesn't feel like too much now. I want to close by saying that my life is better for having known Chuck. I'm a better person. I'm a better father. And tens of thousands of people who didn't have primary health care do now because of the work that Chuck Morgan did. Thank you, Chuck, from the bottom of my heart.
I'm going to turn this microphone to Greg, who's going to be able to run it around if any of you would like to also add anecdotes. I wanted to say, just as an outside observer of this extraordinary Morgan clan, it is not hard to see that Chuck had some of all of the gifts and then some of his own. But all of you have been an extraordinary gem in this Berea community, and what we've heard from the two of you has reminded me so powerfully of what it means to be part of a family that doesn't have anything to do with blood. Those who carried the hard weight of a friend's illness, those who worried and wondered what was going to happen next, and his own worry and wonder for all of you, many of whom he'd known since his own childhood. In a way, his work with White House clinics, with all the hospitals in healthcare, even though it was all the number crunching, was the strong backbone of what makes a community possible, what makes caring possible, what makes family of whatever size or whatever shape in whatever configurations, changing as they might and must, possible. He was the definition of loving, amazing, charitable, charming infrastructure. And I loved that. And I loved watching it. And I loved the results of it. And I'm honored to be a part of remembering that gift among you today. Some of you have your own memories, whether they be for yourself or for family. You are welcome to share them. It would be wrong to enter this gathering about this man without life and laughter, without remembering that life. So I invite you to, if you'll just raise your hand if you're interested, my faithful assistant will scurry to you with a microphone.
And you know you got some good stories, right? You know, he was all of these wonderful, beautiful things. He was a big old redneck, too. West Virginia and Eastern Kentucky, right here on the front row. So you know you got some good stories from high school, college, class, clinics, you guys got some good ones. So start getting the back. I don't want to cause feedback, so come on, you come to me a little bit, and we don't get too messed up.
Good afternoon. My name is Coach Brian Duncan. I'm head coach of Madison Southern Swimming. Had the opportunity years ago to coach all three girls. It's been an absolute blessing to know the Morgan family. I will say, when Chuck first got sick, I called him and was at school. We talked for probably 20, 30 minutes. And I've been in ministry for a long time too, and so I've had phone calls like this that were very just somber, and I was expecting that. I was not expecting laughing my head off for about half an hour straight because of the things that he said about himself, about what he was dealing with. And I kept saying, Chuck, he's like, dude, it's all right. We got to laugh through this, man. It was encouraging to know that this man, this father, had the strength that he did, has the family that he has, because I'm a dad and I want to have that type of strength for my family too at some point. But we, at Southern, I coached. I have to say I coached against Chuck, but really I never coached against him. I coached with him. It was always an honor because I did coach Berea Community at one point in time, but he knew my kids, my swimmers, and so it always felt like when we would have swim meets together that we were together, like we were on deck, never competing against one another, but trying to make sure these kids just got better, because that's who he was. He just cared about other people being better people, and that makes me a better coach knowing that other people, other men feel that way. And so that was just a blessing and a joy to have that, to see him on deck and to know he would reach out to me and ask me questions about what we were doing with my team. And I would have to question him like, man, you know how to do this. Like, why are you asking me? Like, you're an awesome person, awesome coach. But that's just who he was. He wanted to be better. He didn't care where the information was coming from. He just wanted to make sure that what he was doing was great, that his kids and the swimmers could be great too. And they definitely are and were because of his involvement in their lives. So he's such a blessing, family's a blessing, and it's an honor to be here today. So. Wonderful.
Yeah, there you go. I got strict instructions. We got feedback issues. We go too far away. So.
Hey, y'all. You know what? The first thing that struck me when I think about Chuck is, I can't stand no hippies. but then you look around this room, right, and you see all of, a lot of you know Keith Good. He was part of this community structure, part of this school experience that so many of us had. When Keith took sick years ago, he had to start going to White House Clinic regularly for support, and there would be times, and Keith was a prideful man and strong, and he was hurt the fact that he couldn't do for himself in so many ways. And there were times when we would get there and the service was not at a level that made him feel like he was still a human being who had choice. And in those moments, Keith's frustration and rage he would internalize, and I'd maybe catch Chuck and say, Chuck, this last experience wasn't really amazing. And Chuck would say, I don't do anything about that. I'll just do the finances. It's just, I just handle the money. But then there'd be a phone call where somebody would say, Mr. Good, we want you to know how important you are and how much you need to know that we're here to support you the way you need us to. And in those moments, Keith would straighten up again. He would hold his head up and he felt like that even though he was going through this struggle that eventually took him, that he still had his humanity. And I know that Chuck was making that call, was saying, no, this is not how we treat the people in our community because they deserve to be seen, to be known, to be loved. And I know that at his core, that is what he gave to everybody. The last time I saw him in person, he was smiling. He was talking about the love that he has for the amazing family that he has been blessed to be a part of and to create and array, and he had more pride than disappointment in the life that he had created here with us. And as I walked away from that experience, all I could think of is we should all be that lucky one day. We should all be that lucky one day. And I think that's the gift that I took from my friend Chuck Morgan, and I hope that we all have an understanding of his centerpiece here in the community and the humanity that he gave us. And I'm thankful for it.
I can't stand up, I'm sorry. So talking about Chuck's humanity, I want to give a really personal story. As a CFO, we were saying he's in charge of money, and how Wayne says, he'll say one thing that all he takes care of is money, but he does other things that you don't see that he thinks he does. So I had a patient in the White House Clinic. We have very difficult situations for our patients. They don't have money, they don't have family, they don't have transportation. They're dying of cancer. So I have a patient who needs to go to UK right away because they have this advanced malignancy and they don't even have $1 to go for transportation. So I'm trying to find help, and I call Chuck, who's our money person, and Chuck came within, he's from his base in different clinic, 30 minutes away, came and drove personally and brought a gas card so the patient can go to UK right away, that very hour. You'd think, why would the CFO do it and not just assign anybody else? We're all supposed to do. But he's the one who's going to do it at that very moment, and he's the one who's going to stay late later on because he did something and then he had extra work to do at the end of the day because he had to do this and help somebody else. So that's how Chuck is as a CFO. He wasn't thinking of money, he was thinking of patients.
Amen. Great story.
My name is Caroline, and I've been friends with Katie for as long as I can remember, and by default, I've been around her family for as long as I can remember. And I remember from the moment that I tried to jump down their laundry chute at their house, Chuck labeled me as the troublemaker. I think he kind of saw a little bit of himself in me and made sure that I didn't do anything that he wouldn't do. And I was more me every time we'd gone out. And just like I don't remember my life not being friends with Katie, I don't remember my life where I didn't look up to Chuck in every way.
That's so great. You know, Chuck's daughters, we want to thank you guys for sharing your dad. Super guy. Most of you, my name's Marvin Jenkins. Most of you know my wife and her father-in-law have Allen's Flowers here for how many years? I don't know. At one time we had a delivery van. It was a 1987 GMC. It was red and silver. Jonathan, our son, youngest son, would confiscate it, and that was his personal vehicle. But on times when we needed to deliver, we'd take it back. And it'd be a bright sunny day, and I would go to get in it. When I stepped on the running board, it had rained the day before, whatever, and all of a sudden water come pouring over on me. What's going on here? I got up and looked, and the top of it had been squished in. Jonathan, what happened? What did you all do? I don't know, we didn't do anything. One day I had to deliver flowers over to Irving, to a hospital over there. As I was pulling in the drive, apparently Chuck was upstairs on the second floor, and he saw the van. He came down to meet me at the door. And I said, how'd you know I was here? He said, I saw that van coming. I know that van. I've been on top of that van. I said, what? He said, oh yeah. I said, Jonathan, Carlos, we sat on top of it and watched a football game a time or two. And yet my son didn't know anything about it.
I told you there's some good stories there. Oh, in the back, in the back. You have to come meet me a little bit. I can't get too close.
I'm going to do like Mr. Hogg, and I'm not looking this way. We've known Chuck for a really long time. Sorry. Mikaela, I'm going to tell the story you told me yesterday. We all know him to save money. He used to buy a twist and shout and sit in the real Oreos, and Kate would complain that, why, Dad, it's just like a 50 cents more, but you can't buy that. And then she was telling me about living in a house, of course, having utility bills. And she said that he told her, he said, 68 is great, but 72 will get you through. And so I told her, I said, that is one of the things, what popped in your all's head. He's had all the sayings. He used to give my girls a hard time from the beginning because he was a very tall man. And he kind of had a scowl, even though he was super sweet. My girls wouldn't talk to him. So they would hide. And he would tell them every time he'd see him, one of these days, you are going to say hi to me. I'm not giving up. And he worked at them and worked at them just like Chuck fashioned until they finally would say hi to him.
Super. One of the things I won't do is I'm not going to tell the story of the UK University of Louisville football game. It was a minor fisticuffs. Chuck was the instigator, along with the Louisville fan. I won't tell the story, but if you see me somewhere else, I'll try to tell you the story. It's a little bit long and it gets a little rough. There's a couple other guys in the back there that know about it too, so we won't do that.
I think Greg is clear on the van story. The van was another night. So I got to tell one story about Chuck dealing with his disease. And it's one he loved telling because this was pretty close to, well, not to be, but things weren't good. But his driver's license had expired, and he had to have a driver's license, right? So he goes to the DMV, and he gets to the DMV, and he's made the appointment, and he's had to wait, and he is not happy about this, right? Gosh, the government, they're keeping me here. I could be at work, I could be doing something else, I could be useful. Darn it. So he sits down next to this guy, who I'm sure is a perfectly lovely human being, right? And the guy says, I just want you to know, Mr. Morgan, that we are available to do the real ID. And it has many advantages. The real ID is good for 7 or 8 years. You won't have to come back and renew. And Chuck looks at him and he says, well, sir, I've got pancreatic cancer. Can I talk you down to maybe a cheaper 2-year version? Because that'll work out better for me. That is how my brother faced life. And how he faced being his life. I'm going to miss him doing that to people.
And bless his heart, I will say he was cheap. He was cheap. Dude was cheap. He would not buy golf balls.
everything he could find. We would ride in a golf cart to play golf. We'd ride down these, of course, he would slice into the woods occasionally, as we all will, and we'd ride, and so we, as a team, you know, we'd go, and it's like as an etiquette, you go and you help your buddy look for his golf ball and stuff, and he would look at me and he'd say, you know, if you see something, pick it up. You know, so pick up the golf ball and all this stuff. Well, I mean, yeah, you'd do that. I'd keep a couple. He kept everything that he could find. So the golf bag probably has a ton of golf balls in it. Some of them are probably ancient, old, you know. He never bought a golf ball. And listen, 2 or 3 of those clubs, they came from my kid's golf bag. Because I was like, Chuck, why don't you hit a 3-wood when we're out in the fairway? You know, it's the par 5, you know, so hit that 3-wood. He's like, I don't have one. So we'd go a couple of weeks, you know, and then my son wasn't going to play golf. So, but I got him some clubs. So I grabbed this 3-wood. It's right there. He hits it. And I'm like, is that the one I gave you? He's like, yeah. I was like, Chuck, man, that's just an old Walmart club. Why don't you go get a real golf club? No, man, this thing works great. This thing's awesome. He's like, all right, man. So, yes, he was cheap. I'll tell him that. He was shit. We would go to football games together. You know, if it was all about having fun, listen, Chuck loved having fun. He loved being with everybody. He loved doing everything. And he would spend money and do it. But if it was for his own comfort, it's like, you know, sir, it's, you know, $99 a night. It's like, look, dude, I'm just sleeping here for a couple hours. Is there any way we can get this for like $74.50? Or, you know, and that was just classic Chuck. When Rachel destroyed one of our bathrooms because she wanted to have it redone. And so I was telling Chuck about it on the golf course one day, and put his arm around me, and he's like, oh, I was telling him, I said, I'm going to call somebody and have somebody come. He put his arm around me, and he's like, oh, man, we can do that in a weekend. We can do it. I was like, Chuck, you could probably do it in a weekend. I was like, I cannot. I'm not that gifted. But he could. He could fix, do anything, and I know he did that at White House Clinics. I know he fixed, you know, swept the sidewalks, he did everything. That was classic Chuck. That's what he did.
I was one of the pediatricians, so I worked with White House Clinics, and Chuck was our CFO at the time. And I left about 7 years ago, and I work at what is now an FQHC lookalike. So for anyone that doesn't know, there is a ton of paperwork and bureaucracy and just kind of nonsense that goes on, and when you're trying to turn a regular office into this particular type of accredited office. And our boss ran into some trouble last year, and she had all these financial questions that I was wildly unprepared to help with, and I kind of said, I know a guy, but it was after he'd been sick, and I knew that he was working, and he was trying to work, and he was trying to put as much in as he could, but I also knew that he was probably overworking and overextending. So first I got permission from Stephanie to ask for help, and then when I did, I introduced him to my boss at the time, and I didn't know it, but they kind of kept in touch, and he helped her out with it, and he answered the questions. And so as time went on recently, I told her what was going on. I told her I was going to need, you know, a couple days off, and I was coming down, and she was legitimately upset. She had never met him. She has never set foot in the state of Kentucky, but she said, I'm just so sorry for you. He was such a gem. And that was someone that had never actually even met him. So his reach and his expertise was not just limited locally. It really kind of it followed all the people that knew him and that he shared it with. So.
This will not be the last time that we tell stories of Chuck Morgan. It better not be the last time you tell a story about Chuck Morgan. It better not be the only time you sit around and remember somebody who was a piece of work, a really great masterpiece, a piece of work. You know, okay, so most of you know that I am a disreputable member of a disreputable profession, that I, in my copious spare hours, pastor a church, and you know that there is a wide variety of belief. And I have to say, on behalf of all those who know what religion is and can be, you gotta believe what a person does rather than what a person says. You gotta look not just at what somebody can quote, but what they actually do when the chips are down. You have to look past what it is anybody thinks the right reaction is supposed to be, and you gotta look at somebody like Chuck Morgan and marvel at the courage to look at one's own death, to exude such love in such circumstances, to wisecrack right up to the end in a way that affirmed the very gift of life that all of us are given. There is no way that this disease or any other is the wish of some vengeful God, not on a guy who drives people to medical appointments. There is no way that pancreatic cancer is somehow the result of bad living or bad decisions, unless it be by the way that we treat one another and the environment, or the ways in which the chips fall genetically or chemically. This was bad luck for a really great guy. And what it highlights for me is how precious is every life, is everyone that you currently love. No matter how ornery or cantankerous or problematic or troublemaking they may seem, no matter how distant, how far away, how many mistakes you or they or all of you have made, that love, that life is so worth cracking wise about. It is so worth smart assery and hijinks. It is so worth the embrace and the forgiveness and the grace and the courage and the strength, so that no matter how long a life might be, in his case too short, it might be remembered not by what didn't get done or not get said. It might be remembered by what was shown in the light of a character capable of triumphing even over death's demands. There isn't anybody here can tell us what happens next. No preacher, no doctor of divinity, no great scholar. None of us know exactly what happens next. Here, though, is what I believe. I believe love is so much stronger than what we have, that it powers this life and propels us into whatever it is that comes. And I believe that remnants of that love both trail behind and make a path forward. Great love doesn't die. I don't care where it comes from, and I don't know the source, and it seems to not discriminate against any of us, though that might at sometimes seem wise to others. But it does not. Love lives, and it can't be quenched. I hope all of us will sleep on a van or two. And I hope all of us eventually will say I love you to the right people at the right time. I hope every one of you will not hesitate to ask for a charitable discount when appropriate. And I hope every single one of you will look for the kid who needs you most. And even while you might say one thing out of one side of your mouth, act out of the right side of your heart, day in and day out. I want to close with these words that Jay asked me to read. These are his to share about Chuck. When I started to write about Chuck and what he meant to our family and his immense circle of friends, my mind went to the places it has always before. It went to the stories we tell gathering about silly fights and past bad behavior. Those were mostly about me. Bad hairstyle choices those were his. And the semi-lawlessness of our youth. Many of you know the stories by heart because we told them so many times, in part to terrify our children, if we were being honest, to impress them. But Jonathan, Carlos, Greg, y'all can relax, because over the last few days and hours I had a change of plan. The change happened as I watched tributes to Chuck flow in online, over text and in person. From the young woman who shared how his coaching helped develop her confidence and love of swimming, to the many, many people who spoke of how his kind words and smile brought joy to their lives. All those things reminded me of a truth that my favorite writer expressed in the following words. The best portion of a good man's life are his little, nameless, unremembered acts of kindness and of love. So what I want to share today is the thing I most admired about him, which was a quality that he developed over the course of his life. Now, I could do this by describing all roles he held: father, husband, partner, friend, colleague, and brother. But there's a thing that linked those parts of Chuck's life: his desire to make things a little better. And I mean really a little. Because Chuck wasn't often interested in the grand plans to change the world. If you tried talking to him about environmentalism, he'd politely exit the conversation. Or, if you were really passionate, he might stick around long enough to needle you about it just to see if he could get a rise out of you. But if you talked to him about solar panels for your house, oh, then he was all in. He'd start pulling up YouTube videos and pestering you and peppering you with questions about potential installation problems and the long-run return on investment. You see, Chuck was passionate about the little things because what he loved was losing himself in the task at hand, giving it his complete attention. It isn't often that we have physical representations of spiritual attributes, but 401 Jackson Street, the home he restored, comes pretty close. When the family moved in, I remember being a little shocked and wondering how much he would have to spend to fix it up. How long would the contractors be there? Chuck got around this problem by doing most of the work himself. Piece by piece, room by room, he revealed the beauty in the house that had been hidden. While the process took years, he made sure his girls had lovely spaces, and recently he transformed the ground floor of the house into a beautiful shared space. The sad part of that story is the one room he didn't finish was his own. And that too tells us something about Chuck. I'm not here to make him into a paragon of virtue. He had many flaws, some of which he really enjoyed. But I am here to say he was a good man, and the evidence is in this room, in this community. You can see it every day in the lives he touched. So, as we leave here today, I hope everyone will do two things. First, I hope we all count ourselves lucky. While Chuck may not have remembered his little acts of kindness and love, we do. And we get to share them with each other, and by doing that, we celebrate him. Second, I also hope each of us takes a little bit of Chuck's wisdom into the world. If you see something that needs mending, take the time to put it right. Whether it's a squeaky door, or a friend, or a stranger who needs a smile. Fix the little things. When we do, we build on his legacy and make the world better, just like he did for us. Some little things may be forgotten, but none of us will ever forget Chuck. Amen. Amen. Now comes our circle of return. Our return to the daily life that has to be remade and reworked and seen differently because of a prominent, potent absence. We circle amongst each other here, and I hope any who can will linger when the music plays and share with family and with others those stories too dangerous to tell at a microphone. And that we will share those gifts that he shared with us. But when we circle out, back to the cars and back to the parking lot, may you carry also with you great and deep peace, great and deeper strength, great and deeper joy. We may limp, but we limp onward. We may carry absence with us, but we carry it with grace and for the gifts that we have been given. May peace surround all the circles and lay us all in the bosom of such community and love as may make us strong when the time is right. And all the people said, Amen.